So my name's Mandy Nicholson. I'm a Wurundjeri woman, and I also have connections to the Dja Dja Wurrung and Yurray Ilum Wurrung language groups of Victoria, and German on my mum's side. So in terms of where I'm at and who I am and how I fit into the world, is that I've had a lot of trailblazers before me. I've had a lot of matriarchs before me that have paved the way to make it a lot easier for me to express my identity freely. When I was at school, it wasn't a nice place until I went and did a university course at Monash in Churchill. It was called Koori Studies, and it literally enabled me to study my culture, to express my identity, to really highlight who I was without fear. And it was something that I hadn't been able to do outside of my home and family circle my whole life. So that was when I was 18. And from there, there was like a crossroad, and something that really got me out of this hiding away is that, one, it was full of either blackfella teachers and students, but also teachers that had worked with blackfellas for many years. So it was like a really good, safe vibe. And the first assignment that I did was a biography of my life. And I wrote about my blood connections, my land, my different language group connections, and how I knew them all. And from that moment, it's like, what am I hiding from? Like, I did the hiding because I was a very insecure teenager and I didn't want to be different to anyone else. So that's the reason I hid from being different. But then when I wrote that biography, it's like, I know exactly where I'm from. I know my bloodline. I can go way, way, way back. And they're all proud people, proud generations, proud women. And it inspired me to get out there and research as much as I could about my culture, learn as much as I could from my elders. So I lived off country in my teens, but moved back on country when I was in my early 20s. So that enabled me to really reconnect with my family, because living on and off country is very different, where I had a loving, beautiful home and family and wider family, which I didn't see that often, but outside of that bubble, it was not safe to be who I was. So when I was back on country, I had all this beautiful connection and support from mob, and it enabled me to just hit the ground running. And from that moment, I started working in Aboriginal organisations. My first real proper cultural job was at Galena Beak Living Cultural Centre in Hillsville, which is, I think it's called Nganganala now, so they're revamping it, redoing it. But that gave me my cultural footing. And I started being a receptionist there, but then I became I had many titles, the tour guide, the cultural educator, the mentor, and it eventually, all those base skills have led me to where I am now, where I ended up in this journey. I had 2 daughters, and now I'm a grandmother. So that's my life's journey, is to create that same pathway for these next generations coming up. So I've always worked in black orgs, and I went and finished my archaeology degree in 2011. And then I handed my last essay in, and I found this ad somewhere that said there's a job going at the Victorian Aboriginal Corporation for Languages. So I jumped into that, and from there was another pivotal point, because it drove me in the direction of something that's been missing in my life. It was a big dark void that I needed to fill. And I did that when I was younger. I filled my identity, but to fill that dark hole, the thing that was missing was language. So I didn't know any of my language. We knew a few cheeky words here or there, but language, being able to go to VACL for 6 years, understand and unpack language, work out the grammar, the pronunciation, enabled me to start translating nursery rhymes and things like that. So I can translate stories and things like that. I can talk a little bit of language, but it also enabled me to create cultural songs and chants for Jitty Jitty dance group. So we started as a collective back in 2013, so 10 years old this year. And we started with maybe about 6 girls, like daughters and nieces, and it's grown to about 15 women and about 6, 7 little kids. And we're a cultural support network rather than just a dance group. We really make sure that we're friends as well as blood connections. We're all family, but we also connect in many other ways, and one of them is through ceremony. So you'll see we're a little bit different to other dance groups you may have seen. We wear a particular style. So our style of paint up represents the little willy wagtail on our face, and the reed necklaces we wear as an honour or a homage to the necklaces that used to be made and worn by men and women. So we make our own reeds, necklaces, and we get the girls to go through ceremony called murum turu kuruk. So murum or maram means body, turu is the reeds that we have in our necklaces, and kuruk is the female suffix. So they get their belts, we teach them how to make those belts, we teach them about cultural law and respect and things like that. So cultural law, in terms of young women, we just say it's respect for country, respect for others, respect most importantly for self, for body. And we give them, or teach them how to make their possum skin belts. So if they think they don't want that lifestyle and they go down the wrong path, we take the belt from them and they have to earn it back. So it's about creating cultural foundations for our young girls. So after 185 years of it not happening, we reclaimed it back in 2015 with about 20 girls going through. And I went through with 2 senior elders and my girls, my nieces and a few of my cousins, and also girls from other language groups that came in that I've known their mothers for years. They didn't have access. So we continue to do that every year. We've just done it in the past weekend. We had a couple of babies as well, and we had one of my cousin's daughters that has watched all of her aunties and cousins go through, and it was her turn this year. Well, I've got a research fellowship at the State Library of Victoria that started in 2019, but COVID put a pause to that. So I'm just in the makings of getting it up and going again, and it's really focused around gender, around gendered stars, around how language connects different elements and things from that female perspective. Like there are gendered stars, like the stars, the evening star, for example, Ma being gruk, there's that word ending that means female. So looking at the stars, the Pleiades and things like that, and how it connects to Wurundjeri women, that's my focus here, but also how there might be resources that shine a light a little bit more on Wurundjeri or Woiwurrung women's song, because there's not much resources around women or Wurundjeri women's culture, dance, ceremony and gendered language, unless you sort of get your head around the language and understand that that gruk is found on different words. Oh, that's feminine, that's masculine, and work it out that way. So that's my focus here at the State Library. I think the connection with the gendered stars is, and even when you think of the moon as well, the main ceremonies happen when the full moon was out. So when you see different constellations in the Milky Way, for example, like at the moment in the northern Milky Way, not so much now, it's sort of dipping under the horizon, but you can see Bunjil up there, and you can see all these different animals connected up there, and it tells you the seasonal patterns, when to collect and gather food, when the emus are laying and things like that. So with the women's star, that's what I really wanted to focus on, that evening star, to work out why exactly that star is referred to as a feminine star. I went to America with my brother Bill. He got a Churchill Fellowship back in 2017. And I said to him, if you're going, you're not going without us. So we tagged along with him, and his theme was cultural tourism. And the first place that we stopped was Hawaii. And there was a school up on the hill, and it was a massive private billion-dollar school, perfect, beautiful. Lots of money, you can see, went into it. But the humble beginnings of that school were a Hawaiian lady and her husband. I think he may have been English or American, I can't remember. But she saw her culture and language dying, so she started the Hawaiian school. And it grew from about 30 students up until like this, one of the world's richest kind of public schools that fund a lot of different programs around the place. And the teacher that we met there, she goes, we can't fight the system from the outside, you need to fight it from the inside. We've all got PhDs. And before I left, I found an article inviting people to apply for a PhD. I said, oh, no, it wasn't really, but it was in the back of my mind until I talked to that teacher and I said, I've made my mind up, I really want to do it now. So I came back, it expired, the link had expired and all that. So I just rang them and they said, yeah, it's still open. So I thought, if I want to make a true change, because I do a lot of stuff outside of academia that I believe are making a lot of change with our young girls and things like that, but I wanted to make change in the institutions, the colonial institutions, and I thought no better way than to do that. So just this morning I received an email saying that my 2 reviewers have handed in their reports. So officially Dr. Mandy, but it isn't about that title, it also is about being heard. When you've got that little DR in the front of your name, people start to listen a bit more, and it isn't about becoming or assimilating into that colonial structure of institutions. It's about breaking those barriers and really taking down those colonial structures of invasion and making sure that the right information, the cultural information, is embedded right from the very beginning. And what I mean by that, like, I'm writing a course for 3rd year architect students at Melbourne Uni at the moment, and it's all about getting them out of the classroom, taking them outside, teaching them about simple things like, well, it's not simple, it's really major, but it's something that's often overlooked. What's the difference between a welcome and an acknowledgement? What does it truly mean? How do you design on country? How do you look at country? How do you kind of, in an urban environment, how do you keep your culture alive and make sure that culture continues? And the way that I kind of say it, that everyone can do, is you zone out of all that mad noise that's happening around you, all the trams and the yelling and the horns, and you focus on the important sound. So the important sound could be a little dun-dun or a rainbow lorikeet flying across, and at the moment they're going crazy in the city, finding partners and nests and things like that. So even at home I'll be having 3 TVs on, and my niece will have music on, and I can still hear that black cocky or that currawong in the far distance, because you tune your listening into nature. And another way that you can connect to country, and anyone can, is remember country by standing out in the wind, closing your eyes, stopping and taking a breath and really feeling that wind in your hair, taking your shoes off, walking in the grass, making sure you grab the little things and look at them like a little baby does. You grab a gum leaf and you look at the veins in the leaf. Then you compare those veins in the leaf to the veins in your arm. Then on the bigger picture, you look at that and how it compares to the rivers over country look like veins. So that the veins of country are the veins of blood in your body into the veins of the plants. And then you can take that even further, is you crush that leaf and you smell it. So you're smelling country. So there's all these different ways that everyone can connect, but there are spiritual ways that we as Wurundjeri and First Nations people around the world in different variations of this. And we've got 6 identical, fundamental elements of country. So we've got Bikut is the below country where we get the ochre for our celebrations and dances, but we wear it in different ways. So when the girls go through ceremony, they wear it differently. We still trade it. We wear it when somebody's passed away, when we're going through sorry business, we wear it differently again. So it's all about how plants and trees, also the roots go into the ground, so it's a life-sustaining layer, the below country. And then we've got Big Dewey's, the on country, where we balance our spiritual lives and our day-to-day lives, making sure that this one doesn't outweigh this one, because when we're busy in life, this one can sometimes be down here. But then with this one, we've got to make sure we don't get that cultural burnout as well by giving too much. We've got to self-care a bit more. I say that to myself, I don't do it, but I've got to do it more. And then we've got Barnyabik, which is water country. So water forms part of our welcomes, where we get people to drink water from country, so everything's safe while visiting, but we can't do it anymore. Rivers, not healthy. Then it's in all different layers as well. It's in the ocean, it's in rain, it's in water vapour in space. And we don't often really think about that one, but it's in everything. And then we've got Murrunwutbik, which is wind country. So wind blows the smoke from our welcoming fires, but also carries our ngulu or our voice to Bunjil and absorbs into everything around us. And then other ways that, like fire and smoke, connect with the environment. A tree will sense that smoke, and it will trigger the tree to release flowers and seeds, because it knows when the fire goes through, the ground to be ready to germinate, like very fertile after the fire's gone through. So all these different elements are all so in sync with each other. And then we've got Wurrulwurrulbik, which is sky country, where we see Bunjil in his physical form with all the parrots and the birds all over the place in their physical form, and then their spiritual forms up in the stars. So we've got the star Aquila, which is, or Aquila means eagle. The star Altair is part of that, and the two stars either side are Gunawara, the black swans, his two wives. And then you've got the Southern Cross. So the Southern Cross, the two bottom left-hand side stars are Dun Dun and Ukop, so the king parrot and the rainbow lorikeet, so two of his helpers at the base there. And then the two pointer stars are Jurt Jurt and Thada, the Nanking kestrel and the black-shouldered kite. So they're all written up there in the stars, but they're all physical in the Wurrulwurrulbik, and they're all reflective of each other. So you can't take one out, they'll all collapse, but you can flip them all around because they're all in unison. So I've just completed my PhD, and the theme of it is on country, off country. So what it was all about, I already knew this already, because going over to Hawaii and understanding that you need to work from the inside out to make change, is that I already knew you carried country with you. So I needed to get all this evidence to support me. And it was focused on the Gunditj Mirring organisation in Western Victoria, the Gunditj Mara, around Budj Bim. And it was around the structure that they held in terms of the land council, because they've all got different titles and corporations and things like that. So at the time when I started, it was a full group structure where all the members were invited to come in and have an opinion and make change in terms of the management of their country. And then halfway through that changed, now it's got a board of directors. So my thesis theme still remained on country, off country, but how do those members, the majority lived off country, majority in Melbourne. I actually interviewed a few of them, COVID hit, so I had to actually do it online. So I didn't get as many interviews as I wanted, but the way I said, fill this out freely, you're anonymous, write exactly what you feel. So there was some negative in there, some positive, but the main theme was country. I asked one of the questions, is connection to country, or is country physical or spiritual or both? There's only a couple that said both, or just physical, but some said both, but most of them said spiritual, like flat out, because that incorporates everything else. So when I talk about spiritual connection to country, it's also culture, language, ceremony. It's something that's embedded in you before you're actually physically born. It's genetic memory that you've got the knowledge of your ancestors. I believe babies all have it, and they sort of fade a little bit, and then as they get older, they grasp it again, because the knowledge and like even singing, things like that, it's not coming from your physical body. It's coming from the millennia of generations of knowledge that's been passed in your genes. And it's been proven that things like trauma can be inherited through your genes as well. So that knowledge, that genetic memory, can also be carried with you. So no matter where you are, country is with you. And some of the interviewees they'd never been on their homelands. But most of them were saying, I always need to go back to reset, be connected. But there was one that lived overseas that had never been on country, so she still felt that spiritual connection even thousands of miles away. Well, I think the definition of on country, off country is both physically off your homelands, but also you can almost compare that to you can be on country, but you're in that urban environment that chokes it and that drains you. So you need to work out ways how you can still connect when you're surrounded by concrete. So how I look at the cityscape is I imagine it before the buildings were here. I sort of take little tidbits of information that was written about the place, and one thing that stood out to me was where the church is opposite Flinders Street, with all its spires and things like that, getting closer to God and stuff. I thought they had this reference in this colonial paper or whatever, had a reference about this old bial or a red gum tree. And this tree was next door to it, into where there's like a little car park now, and they referred to it as a prayer tree. I said, right, okay, I'm going to reclaim this tree. I'm going to reclaim this knowledge that this tree has got. And I wrote a song about the babandarang, or the mother tree. So it's along the lines of, you have seen many generations of people and plants and animals live in harmony with each other. You embraced your little seedlings to make them grow, and then those little seedlings started to grow, and while they were growing, the mother tree was chopped down, but the trunk was strong enough to keep it alive. The roots were deep, which is language, the trunk's the elders, the shoots that came from there are the community leaders, and the seeds are the next generations. And then the song continues about these seeds germinating and coming up, and those trees growing tall and strong and becoming the mother trees. So I reclaimed that colonial description of that tree, and I look at the landscape in a, not a physical way, but in that spiritual way, and reclaim those different layers of country that are still present. Like even underground, if there's a street called Bouvry Street, it goes basically from the main sort of side entrance of Melbourne Uni down into the city, and the European records were like it would flood when there was heaps of rain. So when that happens, that creek comes back to life and eels can be seen through the grates, the gutters. So that creek is still alive with all those eels. So you think about the urban environment that way, and then you don't even see the buildings. Well, when you look through NAM, through Melbourne, you'll see a lot of colonial or invader buildings, because I think colonial, the word colonial is very soft and fluffs around, where basically people came here and said, you can't have your identity or spirituality, you have to get rid of that, you have to choose ours or nothing. So these buildings represent that for me, but in particular the State Library, there was an opportunity to do an exhibition, and it was all about the stars, and I was called in first to create an artwork that really just, decolonised that space. And the first thing that I noticed in these old buildings, there's no natural light, you can't touch these roofs or windows or floors because they're all protected. So what I did was I created an artwork that was a star that represented Bunjil as the star, the two stars either side, his wives, and I repeated that pattern. And the colour palette was all about the twilight sky, where you can just start to see those stars appear. And it ended up being a 70-odd metre wraparound of the whole exhibition space, really inviting people in and taking them to another level when they're entering a place like this. It created an atmosphere for people coming in. And when you think about places like the State Library or Melbourne Uni, where I've just started working, I think about those buildings, and writing a course for the architects there, I don't want them to go and sit in a classroom, sit in the buildings. I need to get them outside. I need to teach them design and looking at country from different perspectives, from a different view than they're usually used to, and get them out away from that. It's almost like got a gothic feel, like very, I don't even know how to describe, it's not a warm feeling. And a lot of the buildings at Melbourne Uni were used for measuring the thicknesses of skulls and intelligence and things like that. So it's a very daunting place to be as a First Nations person. But what you have to do is reclaim that space as well. So talk about the creek, Bouvry Creek, and talk about country even in that structure of that institution. There are little places that people have created, little walks and things like that. So it's really about stepping outside of those buildings physically and mentally. Yeah, well, the job at Melbourne Uni is all about writing a course for third-year architect students. So that incorporates like straight out architects or landscape architects, designers and things like that. So it's all about sharing my experience as well about working on art projects. One in particular was about cultural safety, and instantly the people that were on their end made it very culturally unsafe. So the processes of working with big corporates and things like that when creating spaces, it's all about, the main focus is all about collaboration, not consultation, because we're the most consulted people in the world, but we're never put down as the first authors. We very rarely get that authorship. We very rarely have more input than that is like a little bit, like, you know, carrot, here you go, here's a little bit to put your knowledge in there, but we'll take all the glory for it. It's happened to me, you know, like professors and things title it as their paper, but it's all your work. And it's all about them coming out of their degree, knowing and understanding the different perspective of working with First Nations people when creating anything in the design world that really will change how they think and look at things before they even start projects. Yeah, well, there's so many things that I do that they do overlap quite often. So there is the language work that I do, the art stuff that I do, the mentorship for young girls, the ceremonial stuff, the singing. I never thought I'd be a singer. I still don't call myself a singer because cultural singing is different to like mainstream singing. I can't sing for anything mainstream, but a dear friend of mine, Dr. Lou Bennett, she is a beautiful singer. And she said, you don't use your colonial voice up here, you use your ancestors' voice from your belly. And you can so hear the difference between when you have a cultural song as opposed to like one with a melody that's sung, that's a popular song, because it comes from a different place. So all of those different things, also a mother and a grandmother, an auntie, ceremonial leader, advocate for highlighting anything to do with First Nation Victoria, making sure that our culture and the beauty of our culture is highlighted and not forgotten. And I think the aim in life is never to let our language fall asleep again and our culture not to disappear. I decided to do my theme on country, off country for my PhD because there was very little information out there written by First Nations people about our connection to country and how we have to really fight to maintain that connection, even not really fight for it because it's a spiritual thing, but fight physically to get on back onto country because of all these restrictions, like many people have to work off country or go to school off country, or they just move for their parents' work or whatever. So that was my life, and I thought I really needed to create a resource for those that may be struggling with all that, and make sure that it was something that is a resource for them to bounce off, that it is doable, it can be done, you can start a language from just a handful of words from one person, and really just keep moving forward and give them that boost and that support if they're researching the similar kind of stuff, because like when I started there was really nothing out there. And in the reports that my revisers were writing, they said the same thing. There was very little First Nation authored papers on this kind of stuff, so they encouraged me to publish far and wide. I think the most exciting research that Black authors, Black academics are really looking at today is the same thing, is language, culture, ceremony, and how that all is tied together and how it's maintained in a modern world, because I would not like to be a teenager today. There's so many bad influences coming from all different directions, like the internet, for example. They've got access to all this stuff that we never dreamed of when we were young. So there's a lot of different things that can destroy a young one's mind and heart and soul. So I think researching stuff that helps keep young ones culturally grounded in all of that stuff, language, culture, and especially ceremony, keep that going. I think they're really important aspects of any research project. I suppose another thing that I do is I create leadership opportunities for the younger ones, because I'm always out there speaking and saying, oh, they always hear my voice speaking, get up there and speak. An example is with my daughter. I said, look, it's always the same people talking. They need a young Wurundjeri voice out there. And she said, no, Mum, stop pushing me. She ended up writing something and she ended up speaking at the Black Lives Matter rally in front of 10,000 people. with so much staunchness and pride in her culture. So that's what I encourage. So the ceremony, the Murum Turukuruk ceremony that happened last weekend, I stepped aside from that and I let all the others take the lead. And what it really entails is the young girls, they get their belt given to them and they get their necklace put on, but then they get ochre put on them. Then they get the ashes from the ceremonial fire that we collect every year and we put that on their feet. And then we get a piece of bread or damper that's made and people will grab that and they'll chew it and then they'll put that into the fire as a symbolic gesture that they'll look after these young girls. So every year I was doing a major role in that, like I organised it all, but I stood aside and I watched it this year. So it's about encouraging the younger ones to take that lead. And I think that's a really important thing.